Hey everyone, welcome to a special edition of Power Core Productions. Now I know what you're probably thinking to yourself, it's Saturday, so what's with the video? Well, I've been thinking about doing this for a while now, and I've decided that Saturdays are going to be something I like to call Wild Card Saturdays. That being that I take the most popular series and I give you a double dose. Now I've waited over the last 2 weeks because I wanted to see which series was really doing the most popular on the channel. And surprisingly enough, that's Naruto Polaris, What If Hanabi Hyuga was born first. Because of this, I have decided that going forward, not only will you be getting Naruto Polaris on Mondays to start your week, but you'll be getting it on Saturdays to end the week as well. Also, this is a good way for me to get through some of the stories a bit quicker. Once we're done with Naruto Polaris, we'll move on to our second most popular story, and that'll take the place of Wild Card Weekend. But this is just something a little special for you guys, as I'm really feeling in high spirit and high energy, and I really just want to give you some good content as often as I can. Now I do have to be honest, whether or not I do this every Saturday is something I'm just gonna have to see going forward. For today, I feel good. But you never know, there might be a Saturday or two where I just don't feel as well and I might not be able to get a video out. If that is the case, I will let you know, usually no later than Friday evening, whether or not a video isn't going to be coming out. Now, of course, there are other situations in my life where something may occur and I might not be able to make a video on Saturday, so please keep that in mind going forward. While I do want this to be a consistent thing, there are things that may or may not pop up where I might not be able to do it. But for the most part, this is something that I do want to do. So today, you are getting Naruto Polaris, What If Hanabi Hyuga was born first, Part 3. And on Monday, we'll do Part 4. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into today's video. So as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Following their mission to the Land of Waves, Team 7 will return home to Konoha, as 2 months' time would pass. During this time, Team 7 would not be sitting by idly. No, Team 7 would continue to grow in their training as well as in their ninja experience, completing more missions along D and even a few more C ranks. Although thankfully this time around, they weren't involved in another situation like in the Land of Waves. Each member of Team 7 continued to grow in their own strength and in their own power. With Naruto, he continued to add more jutsu and more skills to his repertoire. He gained a lot of experience from his training with both Kakashi, Hanabi, as well as Sasuke, and even developing and gaining new jutsu. The two he gained in particular being the Shadow Clone Explosion Jutsu and the Wind Style Gale Palm Jutsu. Kakashi's reason for adding Naruto's new jutsus to his arsenal was based off of the kind of fighter that he was. The fact that he had the Shadow Clone Jutsu at his disposal, and that he could use it to such a degree, it would only make sense to try to evolve it into its next phase. Using the Shadow Clone Explosion Jutsu, it could make Naruto's clones a lot more deadly and versatile, as well as adding to his knowledge of wind release, giving him the Gale Palm Jutsu. Naruto was the craftiest of all three of the members of Team 7. As such, it was always within Naruto's plan to use his shadow clones in a rather unique way, combined with his wind-style ninjutsu, and it made him to be someone who could fight in various ranges of combat. Next would be Sasuke. Sasuke continued to grow in his mastery of the Sharingan, eventually gaining the 2 Tomoe Sharingan. It benefited that he trained with someone like Kakashi, who already had the Sharingan in his possession, as well as training with Hanabi, a user of the Byakugan, and a fighter in Naruto. With that help, Sasuke was able to mature his Sharingan a lot quickly than he would have in the original timeline. On top of that, he also added another jutsu to his arsenal, that being the fire-style Fire Clone Jutsu. Granted, he could only make a max of 4 clones, but even still, for a Genin his age, that was actually pretty impressive. The fire clones working a lot similar to the Shadow Clone Explosion Jutsu, although the clones would only explode when they were defeated. Even still, Sasuke was able to come up with a few combination techniques with his fire clones, as Sasuke continued to master his clan's primary element. Then finally there came Hanabi. Hanabi would continue to grow in her usage of the Byakugan, as well as her clan's signature jutsus. She had also taken to mastering the lightning style overdrive. The overdrive was like a way of increasing her speed and her strength and her perception. In doing so, Hanabi had gone from using the 32 palms to the 64 palms, as well as gaining the lightning style overdrive level 2. Along with that, the overdrive was able to increase her overall usage of the Byakugan, increasing it from her average of seeing from 50 meters, but when using the overdrive, she was able to see up to 100 meters. Kakashi was able to see that his team was growing mightily. As a result, he was even more confident this time around when he wanted to enter them into the Chunin exams. But in the meantime, as the Chunin exams were making their approach, there would be a change in the air, a strong sense of urgency washing over them, as shinobi from all across the ninja world were convening and making their way into Konoha. This was something that caught Team 7's attention. Before long, once they had been informed of their squads being nominated for the Chunin exams, all 3 members would be excited, each one looking forward to having an opportunity to show what they could do, to show just how far they had come and how far they had grown. Eventually, the day of the exams would finally arrive. As Team 7 made their way to the hall, they would be stopped as they were confronted by a young shinobi, someone who was a year older than them, his name being Rock Lee. Lee had been looking forward to the idea of challenging Team 7, since a lot was going on about them. You see, unlike in the original story, where Lee was primarily only focused on beating Sasuke, no, he had set his sights on all of Team 7, mainly being that all of the members were pretty revered and strong in their own right, especially with Hanabi also being a user of the Byakugan, and even Naruto, who was said to be very versatile in his fighting style, completely unorthodox. However, no fight would actually take place, as Hanabi would explain that it wouldn't be fair for them to fight here, and that they should save their strength for when they need it most. Lee would understand and agree with this sentiment of thinking before apologizing for his behavior, vowing that he would meet them very soon. Before long, Naruto, Hanabi, and Sasuke would arrive to the main entrance room, where the first round of the Chunin exams would be taking place. While there, they would meet with the other members of their rookie class. The 9 rookies gathered together once again. Team 7, Naruto Uzumaki, Hanabi Hyuga, Sasuke Uchiha. Team 8, Sakura Haruno, Shino Aburame, and Kiba Inuzuka. And Team 10, Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akamichi, and Ino Yamanaka. As all 9 were gathered together, it didn't take long for the sparks to start flying, mainly due to the fact that there was some bad blood amongst this 9 group. Sakura, who made it very clear her disdain towards Hanabi, would take every opportunity to leave a sly remark, although Hanabi, she simply chose to ignore it. Sakura, in the meanwhile, while also being rude to Hanabi, also tried to flirt with Sasuke, although Sasuke didn't really much care for her either. Naruto in this timeline wasn't really hung up on Sakura, the way you'd think he'd be. The main reason being is that he had friends, people who he enjoyed being around. This version of Sakura, while I would argue took her ninja career a lot more seriously, she was a lot more of a bitch. For those of you who don't know, Sakura and Hanabi were rivals back in the academy days. Sakura had come second place in terms of being Kunoichi of the Year behind Hanabi. For Sakura, she never saw what was the big deal about her. What was all this hype around Hanabi Hyuga? All she had was a little Byakugan. Without that, Sakura clearly would have won Rookie of the Year, and for her, in the Kunoichi division. And she was sure that Sasuke would have been her teammate instead. It was because of this that she couldn't stand Hanabi, and she wanted to beat her more than anything. The 9 rookies would also be introduced to Kabuto, a rather veteran genin who would explain to them the ins and outs of the Chunin exams, as well as revealing his ninja info cards. Sasuke, like in the original, would ask for information about Gaara of the Sand, as well as Rock Lee. He would still get the information that he needed, both of them seeming rather dangerous, but also a mystery. Before long, the written exam would begin as their instructor Ibiki Marino would give them the first test. Much like in the original, the various members of different squads would try to figure out different ways of cheating and trying their best to get the information without getting caught. Now you're probably thinking that Naruto would have been amongst the others trying to figure out how to do something. Well, actually, you're wrong. Naruto's genius had gone up somewhat, but not enough to the idea of him trying to figure out how to cheat, although he definitely knew that he needed to. But still though, he had to figure out a plan. What was the best way that he could cheat without getting caught? He knew he was going to have to think of something and think of it quickly. That was when Naruto would come up with an idea. You see, the window was open, thankfully, while they were taking the test. Naruto would ask to go to the bathroom. As he did so, he would leave behind a shadow clone with a particular instruction. The shadow clone going out of the bathroom would sneak out of the building and run as far away as he could. Once he did so and making sure that he was out of sight, the clone would conjure up as much wind chakra as he could before launching the largest gale palm from about 7 blocks away. Thankfully, the clone mustered up enough strength so that by the time the gale palm had reached the classroom, the gust of wind would have been just strong enough to blow some of the papers all up in the air. While the proctors moved to try to get all of the papers back into their proper order, Naruto had made sure that while the papers had been flying everywhere, he made sure to look around and to see which paper he wanted to grab. He saw one that seemed pretty completed from a guy that looked like he had had the answers, and thankfully, the guy didn't put his name on it. Naruto made sure his paper was completely blank, and he simply grabbed the one that was filled and he slapped his name on it when no one was looking. Now having a completed test, Naruto simply sat back and chilled, and for the most part everything seemed fine. That was until Ibiki walked past Naruto's desk and said, "Nice weather we're having." Naruto nodded as Ibiki simply smirked. "Yeah, I should keep the window closed next time, shouldn't I?" Naruto was worried. Had he been onto him? Had he figured out what he had done? Even still, this was Naruto's only first offense. You had to get caught 5 times to actually fail and for your whole team to be kicked out. Hopefully, if everything went well, he wouldn't have to worry about anything else. For the most part, the rest of the tests would remain the same. Ibiki giving the 10th question and Naruto standing his ground answering it. And before long, the first part of the exam would be over. Before long, Anko would eventually arrive, as she was going to be the proctor for the second part of the exam. She would usher in the students who had managed to get past the first to an area known as the Forest of Death, where they were going to be participating in the second part of the exam. The Forest of Death would still be standard to the original. Each team would receive a scroll, heaven or earth. The job was to get a different scroll from the other team. Once you had the set that you needed, you were to make your way to the tower in the center of the forest, and you had 5 days to do so. Naruto's team would still be given the heaven scroll as they made their way entering into the forest, moving a lot faster and a lot quicker than in the original. Naruto would create shadow clones and send them out in many different directions, believing that any clone could get a few scrolls from some scrub teams and bring them back as quickly as possible. Hanabi kept her Byakugan activated at all times, and keeping them alert to what was happening, while Sasuke stayed on the lookout, as Team 7 were making a beeline straight for the tower to get there as fast as possible. For Naruto's clones, they were able to get a few scrolls all well enough. There were still a lot of weak and fodder teams out there, a lot of them that no one had to take seriously. Naruto's clones would have managed to come back with a few scrolls, 2 more heaven scrolls, and 3 more earth scrolls. This meant now that they had 3 sets of scrolls. Hanabi decided that it would be best if each person carried a set of scrolls, but they would use the transformation jutsu to change them into shuriken. That way they wouldn't be easily detected. With all the scrolls that they needed, everything seemed to be going fine for the most part, until Hanabi looked up with her Byakugan and warned everyone to move out of the way, as from out of nowhere a large snake would have come barreling towards them. Naruto would seemingly be swallowed by the snake as he went crashing deeper into the forest, both Hanabi and Sasuke standing idly as a grass shinobi would appear before them. And now it seems my prey have finally come within my grasp. I have been waiting for this moment. Yeah? And what for? Sasuke would say. To test my mettle against the famed Uchiha and the Hyuga. Sasuke would activate his Sharingan, and Hanabi her Byakugan, the two of them standing ready, even as a strong aura of killing intent washed over them. They were honestly flooded with fear, and for a moment they considered running away. However, they knew that running would not be the answer, and that if they were going to survive, they were going to have to stand together and fight to win. Once they stilled their nerves, the two shinobi would attack against the grass ninja. The shinobi was surprised to see that he had to be on the back foot between the two of them, Hanabi using the gentle fist, while Sasuke fought with his own style of taijutsu. The two of them definitely showed why they had such great prowess. In the meantime, Naruto created a few of his shadow clones, getting them to use the shadow clone explosion technique, blowing up the insides of the snake as he went running back towards where his comrades were. In the meanwhile, the grass ninja was holding its own between both Hanabi as well as Sasuke. When out of nowhere, Hanabi would tell Sasuke to move, as almost 50 Narutos would go jumping in towards the grass ninja, as they all yelled in unison, "Shadow Clone style! Explosion Jutsu! 50 multiple!" A large catastrophe of explosions would occur, bombarding the grass ninja, hitting him with explosion after explosion, as Naruto rejoined with his teammates, believing that they had gotten the win. However, from out of the smoke and the fire, the grass ninja would appear. Her skin seemingly melted off, as she pulled off her face seemingly to reveal someone entirely different. Shadow clones. That's something you don't see very often. It seems all three of you brats have some talent. Now, show me what you can do. The three would stand united as they all fought against the revealed Sound Ninja. They had no idea who he was or where he had come from. The only thing they knew now was that this was a matter of life or death. Sasuke, in combination with the others, would use his ninja wire to keep the grass ninja tied to the tree, as he used the fire-style fire dragon jutsu, running through the ninja wire until eventually the tree was incinerated. When the grass ninja attempted to make a strike, Hanabi would use her rotation to keep it at bay, and Naruto continued to send wave after wave of shadow clones, as well as using a combination jutsu of the air bullet along with Sasuke's fireball to create a scorching inferno, hoping that that would be enough to keep it down. And to an extent, they had done some decent amount of damage. However, their opponent would reveal that even for their best efforts, this was ultimately not going to be enough. He first made short work of Naruto, as throughout the fight, Naruto's desperation caused him to call on more and more of the Nine Tails. However, even still, his power was not something to be scoffed at. For Orochimaru, he thought that he had found 3 test subjects: the Kyuubi, a Hyuga from the main branch, and the last Uchiha. He thought he could have all 3 in his collection. As he extended his long neck, his first target would be Naruto, who pushed Hanabi out of the way only to find himself being bitten by the snake as he fell to the ground thriving in pain. Being shocked and caught off guard by this, Sasuke would be the one to fall next. The snake ninja was going to make his way towards Hanabi. However, he could sense that those who had been tracking him were close by. Hanabi turned and asked for his identity, asking who he was. As he disappeared into the darkness of the forest, he remarked calmly that his name was Orochimaru, and that he would be seeing them very soon. Hanabi, now depleted and with nothing else to do but to protect her teammates, she would move them to somewhere safety and secure. Moving them into a cave that wasn't too far off, she would use her Byakugan to comb for the surrounding areas. She was able to grab some debris and cover the entrance of the cave to make it seem as though it were all solid and that there was nothing inside. While doing so, she would try to administer first aid as best she could, trying to keep the two of them safe, as both Sasuke and Naruto were passed out, the both of them being bitten by Orochimaru and receiving the curse mark. However, in Naruto's case, his curse mark did not remain for too long. It seemed to burn off from what Hanabi was able to observe, and eventually it disappeared. This was due to the potent chakra of the Nine Tails. It wouldn't allow for Orochimaru's consciousness or for its influence to stay over Naruto. No, this body already had an occupant and it didn't need to. And it basically burned away Orochimaru, like a body that was burning away a disease. Sasuke wasn't so fortunate. Before long, Hanabi would have been tracked down by the Sound Three. However, she was still capable enough to hold her own in a fight against them. In fact, she managed to hold them back rather effectively. It was then out of nowhere that both Naruto and Sasuke would awaken, the two of them not being in the best of moods, as seeing their comrade having been jumped the way that she was. They would eventually force the Sound Three to retreat, as Hanabi held the two of them into a hug, holding them close and keeping them safe. As the three all got their bearings about them, they tried to figure out what had happened. Hanabi explained that the one they had fought was named Orochimaru. Sasuke was a bit surprised by this. After all, Orochimaru's name was known throughout the Hidden Leaf. He was a rogue shinobi, once a hero, now turned to an S-class villain. Why he wanted him of all people, they had no clue. Naruto wondered if he was going to be affected by this at all, but Hanabi explained that whatever had happened to Naruto, it had been undone somehow. In the meantime, Team 7 knew that their only objective was to make it to the tower. Thankfully, they hadn't lost the extra scrolls they had taken, and as such, once they were all safe to move, they made a beeline directly for the tower, with about 2 days to spare. Once they had gotten inside and gotten past the test, they would eventually run into Kakashi, who was proud to see that his students had made it within a decent amount of time. However, they alerted him to the true situation that they were dealing with. Kakashi, now sensing its urgency, he would take Sasuke and give him the curse mark seal, keeping the curse mark restrained and allowing Sasuke some time to rest and recuperate before the next part of the exams would begin. A much needed reprieve after everything they had gone through. Other teams had already arrived, or were still making their way, and before long, the second round of the Chunin exams would come to an end, with 7 teams making it to the tower for a grand total of 21. The third Hokage was preparing to give them the information they would need for the finals, when he would be informed by Hayate Gecko that they were going to have to hold a preliminary round, as under these circumstances, there were still too many participants left to advance to the finals. On one hand, this could be considered a good thing, as even Anko had mentioned, usually during this time in the exams, the number of students that remained were usually in the single digits. That was a little hard to believe for some of them. They didn't think that the exam was really that tough, that only single-digit numbers usually made it this far. It must have meant that they were a stronger batch than people had expected. But all the same, the next part of the exam would be one-on-one combat. And as such, they were going to have to hold a preliminary round, with the winner of these rounds moving to the finals. Like before, Kabuto would drop out, and this would leave an even number of 20 students. 10 matches. Only the best 10 would advance to the finals. A random lottery would be put into order, and the students would be selected to face one another. Now, unlike in the original timeline, for this story, I actually used a random number generator, because in this type of event, the exact odds shouldn't be coming out the same. Also, this can give some unique and different matchups that we didn't get to see in the original story. I will briefly explain how each fight goes and who wins. So without further ado, let's go into our new preliminary rounds. In the first round, Ken of the Sound Village would face Tamari of the Sand Village. This matchup would be heavily in Tamari's favor, as Ken was probably only a lesser version of what Tenten was, only fighting using her Sinbon, as well as her Genjutsu. However, Tamari, being a long-distance fighter, would be able to blow away every attack she could throw. Tamari advances to the finals. The second match, Hanabi Hyuga versus Kiba Inuzuka, Leaf versus Leaf. This matchup would heavily be in Hanabi's favor, even with Kiba working with Akamaru. Hanabi has the Byakugan and she has the 64 palms, as well as the lightning style overdrive level 2. She would be able to shut down the chakra points of both Kiba as well as Akamaru. She also had rotation within her arsenal, but she had no reason to use it here and reveal all of her tricks. No, Kiba would put up a good fight, trying to use smoke bombs, trying to use illusions, trying to deceive and get the upper hand over Hanabi. But Hanabi's Byakugan simply proves to be too much of an overwhelming factor, and Hanabi gets the win, advancing to the finals. The third match would see Sasuke of the Hidden Leaf versus Masumi of the Hidden Leaf. Unlike in the original, where Sasuke fought Masumi's partner Yoroi, it would be Masumi that Sasuke would fight this time around. On the plus side, Sasuke would have 2 days of rest after getting the curse seal on his curse mark, so he would be able to use his Sharingan as well as all forms of his ninjutsu. While fighting against an opponent that was able to stretch and move their body around freely could be seen as a bit difficult, Sasuke would have the strength and the skill to overcome him. While it would be a little bit more difficult, Sasuke would get the win and advance to the finals. The fourth match, Kankuro of the Sand versus Neji of the Leaf. This battle heavily favors Neji, simply being that while Kankuro is skilled with the puppet jutsu, his puppets wouldn't be effective against Neji in this regard. For one thing, Neji with the Byakugan would be able to see that Kankuro was actually hiding where the puppet was, and that the Kankuro standing before him was just a puppet. With the gentle fist, he would be able to sever the chakra strings of the puppet, making them effectively useless. Being faster and attacking Kankuro's main body, shutting down his chakra points rather effectively. While Kankuro is a skilled and dangerous shinobi, this is simply just one of the worst matchups he could have had in the first round. As a result, Neji wins and advances. The fifth battle would see Yoroi of the Leaf versus Naruto of the Leaf. Yoroi's absorbing ninjutsu would prove to be a dangerous technique for Naruto to face, as when Naruto would try to gang up on him with clones, Yoroi would simply grab and manhandle them, absorbing their chakra, causing them to puff and smoke. Naruto would have to fight from a distance, sticking and moving, trying to avoid having all of his chakra drained every time he was touched. However, Naruto's taijutsu would be adept well enough. Getting a few choice strikes would be easy and effective. This time around, Naruto would develop a unique type of fighting style, something similar to that of the Uzumaki Barrage, although not quite since he never saw the Leaf Hurricane. He would have to create something that was unique or different. More than likely, he would use his clones to fight from a distance, kicking Yoroi over and over again, until the main clone went in for the finishing strike, knocking him out rather effectively. The battle would be a bit longer, and Naruto would have to use more of his brains, but Naruto would get the win. The sixth match would see Zaku of the Sound versus Sakura of the Leaf. Zaku would be injured from his fight with Team 7, so he wouldn't be at full strength. Now I know what you're thinking. How strong could Sakura truly be? The answer is that she is pretty deadly. You see, it's often played up that Sakura had a talent for genjutsu, but that was never really explored. However, now, Sakura has had 3 months of training with her sensei Kurenai, who is renowned in the Hidden Leaf for her genjutsu. Sakura would use her genjutsu effectively with her standard ninjutsu, being able to catch Zaku off guard and eventually defeat him. Sakura is becoming a genjutsu prodigy, and with her skills, and with Zaku already being heavily injured from his fight with Team 7 earlier, she would get the win and advance to the finals. The 7th match would be Choji of the Leaf versus Rock Lee of the Leaf. Two powerhouses in terms of their taijutsu. Choji would use the human bulldozers to go up against Rock Lee and his Hidden Leaf Hurricane. It would be a contest of strength to see who could win out, with Lee's power ultimately getting the upper hand, kicking Choji back into the wall and knocking him out. Rock Lee would get the win and would advance to the finals. The 8th match would see Dosu of the Sound versus Ino of the Leaf. To keep things short and to the point, Dosu would get the win. While Ino has a few tricks up her sleeve, in the end, Dosu would just take her out effectively and would go on to the finals. The 9th match would be Tenten versus Shikamaru. Shikamaru would ultimately get the win here over Tenten. The main reason being that similar to his fight versus Ken, Shikamaru would simply maneuver the fight into a place where he would have the advantage. Once he was able to use his Shadow Possession Jutsu, he would simply move her to a place nearest to the wall before doing a complete backhanded handstand and knocking her head into the wall simultaneously, knocking her clean out, as Shikamaru advances to the finals. The 10th and final match, however, would be Gaara of the Sand versus Shino Aburame of the Leaf. This fight would be intense, but it would not go for long. Shino would attempt to use his bugs to ward off against the sand attacks, and for a while they were actually being pretty effective. Shino using some of his smaller insects to hide within the sand, as absorbing as much chakra as they could from it. Shino's bugs would be a decent counter to the sand attack. However, Shino's main problem is that he has no way of landing any real attacks on Gaara. It was ultimately just a game of cat and mouse, before Shino soon realized there was no real chance of him winning. While his insects were able to eat up some decent amount of chakra from Gaara's sand, and was even able to slow it down a bit, when Shino tried to go in for a few strikes, or for a couple of attacks in his own, he was not able to get past Gaara's defense even once. As a result, Shino before long would concede defeat. However, a large wave of sand would come washing towards him. Shino feared that this would be the end. However, a few of the Jonin would appear and disperse it as the match was over, Gaara retrieving his sand as he took his victory and advanced to the finals. With that, the 10 remaining would be the ones who would get to advance and go to the next round of the Chunin exams. It would be Temari, Hanabi, Sasuke, Neji, Naruto, Sakura, Rock Lee, Dosu, Shikamaru, and Gaara. They would be the 10 finalists. As they were preparing to determine what the final rounds would be, they would all cast lots, each one picking a number from a box. Neji drew number 1, Hanabi drew number 2, Sakura drew number 3, Sasuke drew number 4, Dosu drew number 5, Shikamaru drew number 6, Gaara drew number 7, Rock Lee drew number 8, Temari drew number 9, and Naruto drew number 10. Once their numbers had been picked, Ibiki would write something down on a paper. It didn't take long for everyone to realize that they had actually been picking their own round selections from the very beginning. Once they had done so, they would see the paper and it would reveal where they would be fighting and who, as seen on your screen. The matchups would be selected as follows. Before the first round of the exams would begin, a wild card round, if you will, would need to be held. As there were 10, there were going to have to be 2 extra matches that would whittle down the number to 8. Then there would be an organized final 8-man tournament that would go from 8 to 4 to 2 until eventually they had their winner. Neji, being number 1, would get a bye to the first round. As for Sasuke and Dosu, as they drew numbers 4 and 5, they would fight in the first wild card match. The winner of that match would face Neji in the first round, while Hanabi and Sakura would get their match in the first round. As for Shikamaru, he would be getting a bye to the first round as well, while Temari and Naruto, who drew numbers 9 and 10, they would be fighting in the second wildcard match, with the winner of their fight advancing to the first round. And finally, to close out the first round, it would be Gaara versus Rock Lee. So, in full explanation, the first 2 matches, Sasuke versus Dosu and Temari versus Naruto, these will be the wild card matches. Once the wild card matches are over, there will be a 10-minute interval before the first round begins. The first round will be Neji versus Dosu or Sasuke. Next, Hanabi versus Sakura. Then Shikamaru versus the winner of Temari versus Naruto. And finally, it would be Gaara versus Rock Lee that would close out the first round. All 10 genin would have 1 month's time to train, to hone any skills that they would need in preparation for the finals of the exams. The third Hokage would wish them all luck as they would all leave and make their preparations. Kakashi would wait outside as all members of Team 7 had made it to the finals, and he would compliment and say that he was proud for how far all of them had come. Of course, now it was time to decide where they were going to be training for the next month. Of course, Hanabi, once she told her father of the good news, she was more than likely going to be training with him and the Hyuga clan for the next month or so, as they were going to want to make sure that Hanabi performed well in the Chunin exams. As for Sasuke, Kakashi had already set aside to wanting to train him. But then finally, that left Naruto. For Kakashi, he had originally made plans for Naruto to train with Ebisu, but Naruto was already good enough that Ebisu probably wouldn't do him that much good in terms of training. But still, Naruto was going to need a teacher, someone that could help him develop. From out of nowhere, there would be a hearty laugh coming in the distance. An older man with long silver hair, dressed in green and red, would appear. "Hey there, Kakashi. Long time no see. So, is that the little brat I've heard so much about?" "Master Jiraiya, I didn't expect to see you here. I was in the area. I had heard much about him, and I figured I had to come see for myself. So, you made it to the finals, eh, kid?" "Yeah, I did. Who are you?" "My name is Jiraiya, the Toad Sage. Nice to make your acquaintance." "Oh. And you're here, Master Jiraiya?" "Yeah. I figure they're going to have your hands full over the next month. So why don't I take the little kid over and train him? Oh, Naruto, this would be a good experience for you. Really? Yes. Lord Jiraiya is a very powerful shinobi in the Hidden Leaf, one stronger than even myself. You would gain much more from training with him. Naruto would be excited by this, having his own teacher, someone who could actually show him something useful. Jiraiya would grin. He had heard a lot about Naruto, and about how far he had developed in such a short amount of time. As such, he believed that this guy had a lot of use, and he wanted to see what he was capable of. Before leaving though, Naruto, Hanabi, and Sasuke would all join together, each one putting their hand in the center, vowing that they would make it to the finals no matter what. Hanabi and Sasuke would grin. If everything worked out, they would be fighting in the semi-finals, meaning that whoever won between that fight would have a direct path to the finals. As for Naruto, he was going to have to fight from out of the trenches right off the start. A wild card match with Temari, then he'd have to go through Shikamaru, and then in the semi-finals, he would have to face either that Rock Lee guy or Gaara. In either case, Naruto was looking forward to the test. All three members of Team 7 preparing for their training, as the finals of the Chunin exams loomed in the distance. This concludes Naruto Polaris, What If Hanabi Hyuga Was Born First? Part 3. As always, if you enjoyed today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for Monday's video as we continue Naruto Polaris, What If Hanabi Hyuga Was Born First? Part 4. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.